Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief. Woohoo! Party! Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Is YouTube gonna work today? Hey, look at that! It's working. Awesome. All right, so it looks like we've got that up and running. There's a few people over on YouTube. Good morning, all you YouTubers, and of course, we've got a bunch of people in the Google Meet this morning, the room. So good morning, all you people. Obviously a very big fireworks day in the market. Lots and lots of stuff to learn from, including the old man. Really good analogy of why you need to square positions ahead of big fundamental event windows, because sometimes the market can move on a dime on these things, and I think that's exactly what happened here this morning. So we should probably start off at the top. Long and short of it here, Jackson Hole event that we've been waiting for, waiting. And of course, Mr. Powell's speech through that event. And actually, the interesting thing is I think that Mr. Powell actually tried to soothe the market and tried to make people feel like, okay, things are under control. And then good old, I don't know what the hell you call him. I don't know, this crazy guy running the United States of America comes out and basically says that America, and I thought, the most interesting part about all this is, and I don't know whether it actually says it here or not, but Mr. Trump basically came out today and ordered U.S. companies to start moving away from China, which is really shocking. That you'd actually come out and actually outright say, I'm ordering you. But nonetheless, market didn't like that at all, very inflammatory statements. Certainly not. Now, right here, this is what shocked me. American companies are hereby ordered to immediately start looking for alternatives to China. Boom! Holy crap, gee whiz. That's pretty intensive. So the markets are all over the map, and you wonder whether maybe the powers that be wanted to stop the stock market from moving higher because maybe they have options expiries and stuff that they're worried about. But nonetheless, following Mr. Powell's speech, I think that the market's risk on assets were starting to get depreciated, and then Mr. Trump came out and said his thing, and that just accelerated the situation. I even put out a tweet to that effect this morning. I still can't come to a solid conclusion as to whether Bitcoin is a risk on or risk off asset right now. Very confused, but if anything, I think this also speaks to Mr. Tom Lee's sort of the reason why for portfolio managers he likes Bitcoin so much is that it's just so not correlated with either stocks or bonds. Some days it acts like a stock, some days it acts like a bond or gold or yen and a risk-off asset. So, I think that the jury's still out with regard to where Bitcoin falls in this crazy world. Sometimes I see that, it's totally a risk-on asset. Sometimes I see otherwise. So, long and short of it here, when we pull up the charts, you can see like I said before, such a good lesson. Everybody at TRI, please write this down. And keep in mind, the old man, and I don't know whether I call myself an old man or not, but anyway, Brian, he still needs to learn from a lot of his mistakes and stuff. But I thought this was an excellent analogy of why we had to wait for that Fed Powell statement speech and today to get out of the way before we really start seeing, clear direction following a lot of consolidations. I think I had on my chart We just had a ton of triangles building up into this event all over the map here. And I get the impression that we got a lot of head fake prior to the actual event. And, specifically with regard to gold, I've been talking lots recently about this diamond pattern. And it looked to me, and algos were starting to get, jumpy, and I even had bearish bot setups coming in. And it looked to me like we were losing the bottom of this triangle and this diamond pattern, but I think, if anything, classic head fake move ahead of the Powell speech this morning, and then Mr. Trump's addition to the equation. And so, very simply put, and I even put a tweet out to that effect last night, I was saying, it sure looked like we were resolving to the downside. Things were going well, but in the back of my head, and I was even talking with Nathaniel on the lounge last night, I was like, you know what? This is a pretty dangerous trade, and had I been at prop firms and stuff like that, guys like Nebraska and Hogue and stuff would be very, very upset at me if I had this open position on heading into the actual Powell speech. And you can literally see that literally it was like the trade was working perfectly fine. Mr. Powell was expected to speak at 7:30 my time this morning, and you can see just a cute little double bottom came in right off of this trend line, literally about an hour or two before the speech. And so the perfect example of, okay, fine, your setup's working, but you better cover your position heading into a big fundamental event, or you might just have your head handed to you. I suppose the one good thing about this setup, if there's anything that can be taken away good from a failed trade, was that the trade itself was risking about $9 or $10, so not a hell of a lot of money. And I was just sort of reviewing with Kevin before we started this. You see, there is the stop out level, and the market actually even just came up to this level. Let's see, we'll just put that right on there. Let's maybe make this a little bigger. The market came up to this level, and you can even see, even just off of this 5-minute candle, it did, oh darn, I can't move that up now. Fudge. It did come up to this level, hit the stop level, and you can't argue that you didn't have the opportunity to get out of the trade at the stop level. So this is a 5-minute bar, so it zipped up here, it went a little bit above, stops are tripped up, so, and then it actually finished the candle right at that level, and then opened up the next candle and took off. So you could make the argument that the stop level was definitely respected. But having said that, long and short of it here is this is a failed setup, and you're never going to be right 100% of the time, absolutely. But also too, if I was going to journal and log, I think there's a really, really good lesson here in putting on a position heading into a big fundamental event, tisk. That's a bit of a no-no. And Brian's got to learn from those mistakes. You can see it right across the board, like I sort of said earlier. Quite remarkable here. Where the hell is it? Oh, I think I put it over here. Yeah. Yen, bonds, and gold all waited for the event, and it actually looks to me like the consolidation was nothing more than just sort of cleaning up the overbought condition in these markets. They go sideways a little bit. Some guys come in on the short side, liquidity, all that kind of stuff. And then the event happens, and then trend resumption. And, of course, all the people that did take short shots up the top here, they're slowly getting stopped out and providing liquidity for the market. I suppose one could argue that, on something like the gold, We probably still don't know whether this thing is actually broken out here until we actually take out the 1546.10 area. So here we are sitting at 1537.50, but heading into the weekend, I'd be surprised if that wasn't taken out. Certainly no trade setups per se here for me through this. I suppose one might argue as well, we could probably, might even look at this through the weekend. Do we have bullish bots that potentially could set up here? If I change this to bot setup, yeah, we did hit 33%. So technically, trend continuation people are feeling pretty good here. So it wouldn't be shocking. Yeah, so let's see how the market acts off of this 1529 level. I just eyeballed this. What number was that? 1489 even. So actually, it's a little bit too high here. 1489. There we go. So let's keep an eye on 1529.30, and believe it or not, if we do resolve and break out higher, then that's projecting now 1650 on the gold. So we'll watch how this develops. I suppose you could argue one low, two lows. Did we go to new lows here? I think we did. Low 1502, 1503. Yeah, we did. So one low, two lows. Maybe we might get a little bit of backfilling here and see if we can put in another little double bottom, and see whether we can hunt a justification to be on the long side here. A very nosebleedy, no doubt about it. This thing has come an awful long way. I might be a little bit worried about sort of a head fake move to the upside and then it dumps. So I don't know whether I'm comfortable with the idea of chasing this right here. I think if there is a long trade to be had, I gotta let this develop a little bit more, but we'll see how it goes. Only time will tell. When we look at some of the other risk-off assets, you can clearly see the Japanese yen has caught a pretty big bid here. Again, sort of same sort of thing, working up against the top end of the range. And you might argue 1, 2, 3. Did we go through that low? The low is 93.85, and this low is 93.835. 8.5. So yeah, we didn't even make a lower low here this morning. So probably stuck at one low, two low, same sort of thing. Probably need to see some backfilling here through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday kind of idea to start getting trend continuation signals there. And then the bonds, same sort of thing, just head fakes all over the place. Diamond or triangle resolves bearishly, and then they quickly jump up and bust it out. This did go to a new low here this morning. That's pretty clean. So same sort of thing. If we were thinking trend continuation, I'd like to see a little bit more cleanup here before I can start hunting those long setups. So we'll see. The jury's still out. Interesting how there is a cheeky little gap right here on the bonds, right at what's that level? 165.27. We're sitting 165.14. We had a high here this morning of 165.24. So my hunch is probably they want to work the thing up a little bit higher. How are we doing? I'm just sort of going through the charts here. I haven't really looked at the chat. Is everything sort of marching along okay? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, everything's fine.
Okay. I do see Tony's chatting away there and calling. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure we're doing okay here. And then, that's the risk off. Gee whiz, they're all catching a bid. This morning, lots of head fakes through these triangles, no doubt about it. And now if we look at risk on, stocks, they didn't like to hear what, first off, I think the first sort of salvo that was fired overnight. And when I woke up this morning, I saw people posting in the lounge. I think Stuart even made reference to it. The Chinese have done sort of retaliatory tariffs overnight, and I suppose that's why Mr. Trump responded the way that he did. So, interesting how we had this, fascinating pullback into reload zones. Nice little FUs in here to just screw over the weak hands. And then they launched it right back up against the top end of the range. Julian, of course, talked lots about how there was quite a bit of options open interest just up top here. So, again, I wonder whether, coming out of that Fed Powell event, on the sort of knee-jerk reaction, the reaction wasn't too negative. I suppose you can see it's in here, right? So this is a 4-hour. I suppose if we go down to like a 1 hour, we'll see it a little better. On the actual Powell event, the market sort of waffled a little bit. Powell said, from what I understand, that things are a bit challenging out there for the world economy. He didn't come out as hawkish as a lot of the Fed speakers. I remember I had made reference yesterday. We heard a lot of Fed speakers were pretty hawkish. They were comfortable with where rates were. They were sort of reluctant to lower rates, yada, yada, yada. He came out this morning, and as I had sort of pointed out just to begin the conversation today, I got the impression from what he said that he was kind of trying to placate the market. Carefully watching developments, will act as appropriate. And I think, if anything, the market kind of breathed a sigh of relief. It's a complex and turbulent picture, all that kind of stuff. The 3 weeks since our July meeting have been eventful, yada, yada, yada. And so I think the market on balance was sort of like, okay, well, we'll take it in stride. He's going to help us. And then, of course, Mr. Trump came out and said, abandon all business in China. And, of course, the market didn't like that at all and just completely dumped. The interesting thing about this, again, how much of this is Mr. Trump was sort of given orders to make sure that the stock market did not close above these levels. Is he encouraging sort of the selling this morning? That wouldn't surprise me out of this guy. But I suppose you could argue that, the appropriate area for us to be hunting for support, ironically enough, is we might even get one of these reload zones within reload zones kind of idea. But, this was the bottom that was put in there just last week, and I don't know whether that was. That was the 19th. No, it isn't. Excuse me, the 15th. So that was 1 week ago. Interesting how all they've done here is they've just literally brought the market right down to Mountain Man, and you can even see here, this is an hourly chart. We're only 20 minutes into the new hour, but there's good old Mountain Man just doing his job. And I think he just got handed a pretty sweet fill there. So, how much of this is just finessing the market? How much of this is, prices have gone a little bit too high. Let's back it up into a reload zone. And the original bottom. Wicks and tails like to be eaten. Cheeky little tail right there. Bunch of trap bears that would love to be released. And I think that's what they're getting right now. I suppose, we could, just for argument's sake, see if there's any kind of signs of divergence or anything developing. It looks like the bears are very much awake. Momentum has failed here, so kind of tough. Probably going to have to let this settle out a little bit. In sort of comparison terms, I think we're maybe sort of right in here right now. So this thing has just broken, and my hunch is probably, those square up positions. Interesting when we just look at this range in particular. You can see we're at value low right now. So, it wouldn't surprise me if guys like Hogue and, of course, there's Mountain Man and stuff, they're probably taking profits on shorts up top here. Might be a little bit early for them to actually be thinking about buying, but we'll see. Only time will tell. But clearly, risk on just got a big old punch in the nose there today. All right, where should we go next? Let's maybe move this, put this back.
Yeah.
What's up, Kevin? Kevin, was there something on your mind? Actually, I don't think I did introductions. I should formally let everybody know that we've got Kevin driving the bus today. Hi, Kevin. How you doing?
Hey, what's up? Sorry, I just got kicked off and then I jumped back in.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, I guess these meets and hangouts and stuff are still doing their business. Probably the one market that I'm going to be keeping a close eye on here is the crude market. Gold and crude have, quite often move in opposites. So seeing the gold jump up here, it shouldn't surprise any of us to see the crude coming off. And I suppose you could argue it's not really the prettiest of triangles, but it sure looks like this triangle, especially these uptrend lines, if we draw an uptrend line off of these lows. It sure looks to me like that just resolved bearishly. I don't know whether we can still talk head and shoulders. I think that's off the table. But algo's gone uber bear here, so at least the algo called something right here. Way to go. I don't know whether I would actually have a trade develop out of this or not. But we should keep an eye on crude as sort of, a risk on asset. If we're going back into risk off in earnest, this thing's probably going to crap out, and you can see a new M has come in on this event here today. So be cognizant of that going forward. It looks like energy's relatively weak here. I think on balance, we were looking at some, and actually it gets interesting. Kevin even had a little pharma name that he was interested in. What was that symbol again, Kevin? Do you remember? I don't know whether Kevin's still here. Maybe he got booted off. There was this one little interesting pharma name that I was keeping an eye on. I guess we lost Kevin. The Santa Fe internet connection must be a little bit choppy today. But nonetheless, here's one little pharma name that I was keeping an eye on here through this morning. DFFN. A nice little close above here will give us a W there, so keep an eye out for that. And actually, we probably could scroll back through the lounge. Kevin, if you do rejoin us, and you can always jump in here.
Yeah, I'm back in the meeting.
Hey, there he is. What was that pharma name that you had your eye on this morning?
Oh, VTGN, I think. Let me see here.
Oh, here it is. VTGN, yeah.
Yeah.
So, the only reason why I mention it is if the stock market indeed is topped and risk on is back off, then we probably should see outperformance out of the pharma names. They're sort of a good place for people to hide. And Kevin happened to have this one pop on his screen, I guess, this morning and posted in the lounge. So you can definitely see, if this sort of trend away from growth and towards, conservative places to hide, and pharma names often are that. You can see the double bottom that's trying to come in off of this guy. So watch this 65-cent level there on him. And then, as I said, this DFFN was trying to break out here. Probably a really good lesson in good old LJs. I'm trying to get this to cooperate. Sorry. So we got 1, 2, 3 tags of a trend line. Can we resolve on the other side of it? Can you show me a W on the other side of it? And it looks like potentially a new W might be trying to come in here. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on this one. And I think there's only like 8 million shares out on this thing, so extremely light. So this is just something for you to chew on if you do play stocks. I thought it was interesting, and I think it was Nathaniel and I were chatting a little bit. I think this is an interesting company. We sort of picked it apart last night. They're carrying a lot of debt. So, and we actually broke the balance sheet apart, and you can see the interest they have to pay on their debt is just staggering. But it is a very well-diversified tobacco company. And they do even have, they did interesting business in the soybean oil market. And I kind of like soybean oil right now. And, well, I've been talking about soybean oil since the beginning of the year. But Nathaniel had this one come up. I think he's been watching it for a while. And we're going to be watching this in the lounge, he and I, just seeing how this plays out. We're going to see how tests of these lows go. And this is sort of like the whole sort of pot stock industry. We're starting to come down into some really interesting levels. And if you're going to take a shot on these kind of names, now's not a bad time to consider them. Having said that, what I really need to see is a nice W come in on the other side of this trend line. So I'm kind of looking for a pullback into this reload zone. If we can W out and rock and roll, then hey, might be really interested in that name. So there's a couple ideas for you to chew on out of Stockland. I suppose don't really see anything else that's really jumping out at me here this morning over here. Just a lot of wiffle waffle, and of course, if the stock market does decide to fall apart here, I would imagine a lot of our names that we were really interested in, looking for further upside. This CTL CenturyLink, it's ready to go. All somebody needs to do is just pop it up through here, and we get another new W. You can see the cute little bottom that's trying to come in on momentum. You can see the bottom that's trying to come in on volume. But, if the stock market itself is just falling off a cliff, then probably not going to see much performance out of him just yet. And I'm seeing a lot of that. Like the Sonos, for example, really good sort of analogy of why we got to take profits when our levels are hit. Looks like she's actually fractaling out now. So, that trade's basically, back on the shelf for the time being. Big old gaps down here at the top of value. So for heaven's sakes, please don't chase this. End of the move, not the beginning of the move. And I thought it was really interesting to see this overstock. It sort of it had its big run up, and I liquidated all my position basically at a sort of an intrinsic value at $24. I was thinking, oh my God, what have I done, you idiot? And then the Overstock CEO came out and said that he was all caught up in the what do they call it? The deep state, all that kind of stuff. And he came out, I think it was yesterday, and said that due to all this sort of scandal and stuff that's going on in the short term, that he was actually going to resign from the company completely. I'm sure he hasn't sold his stock, but he's no longer part of the board of directors. Again, I think this story's over, and I'm sort of happy I just hopped off and walked away. So stock market could look a bit choppy here, and of course it is the end of August. We're heading into Labor Day. We're heading into the fall. I just don't know whether we can, continue to work our way higher here. We've done some technical damage here today. Probably still stuck in a trading range for the time being. Let's see how we act against this gap down here on the S&Ps. Maybe we have to come back and flirt with this trend line a little bit more. But we're gonna have to, at the very least, see things like inside bars and fractals and stuff for us to get back on the bull side here. The other thing that I noticed, and I thought this was really interesting, for those people that are wanting to sort of learn how to day trade on TRI, I saw some just stunning comparisons here with Bitcoin and with the stock market. We had talked last week, and I remember this specifically, that we had, an algo signal fire off of this double bottom, and of course the market went zipping up there. And ironically enough, that algo signal playing the double bottom, I mean, really, technically, that's still working, and it's just a little bit underwater. It's not like it's actually dying 1,000 deaths. There are those signals. And, if they're backing it up into Mountain Man levels and reloading again, this trade idea might still work. But it is now back underwater after being above water for a while there. But, sort of continuing our conversation there, like for those people that hunt levels, I mean, this was just such an incredible level. Right into reload zones, nice little FU on top of Mountain Man levels getting tagged. I really like the idea of the candle body lows in reload zones as trade location. Of course, if you're going to buy reload zones, I think this is an excellent analogy that you have to risk to the bottom of this tail, even though it's really ugly and it's far away. And this is exactly why, right? Because of all this mess in here. She did accept back higher and rallied right back up into the top end of the range. And again, it looked to me like stock market wants to move higher here, but, Mr. Trump just came out and said, no, you're not going anywhere. So, and, we were even posting in the lounge, at any given point in time, we're only one tweet away from basically the market falling apart here. No, I don't have a fan running today, Julian. Sorry, it's not today. There's no fan running today. But thanks for the feedback. Anyway, the point that I wanted to make here was big rally up against the high end of the range. Now we're just coming back down to the bottom of the range. And then lo and behold, Bitcoin did almost exactly the same thing. Candle body lows for trade location, reload zones, came down into those levels, rallied away exactly like the S&P did, came down, stopped those weekend people who are just working stops against these lows, stopped them out, and then promptly turned and started to work its way higher. I mean, when I saw this developing yesterday, and I even put out a tweet to the effect this morning. I mean, this is almost shocking how cliche this is, and how incredibly telegraphed this was. I mean, just incredible. So I think you could make the argument that we're sort of like right here right now. This was the ES, the S&Ps on the 16th, so I guess that was last Friday. 16th last Friday, third Friday of the month, big options, monthly options expiry. And here we are 1 week later, and it sure looks to me like Bitcoin's just right about here. So I just took this candle pattern and just go on to sort of this bar pattern tool. Just literally took this pattern, copied it, and pasted it on this chart. And so I just wonder whether our fate has to look something along these lines here for Bitcoin. It's quite remarkable how similar this is. So, and then also too, if we do actually, follow this sort of thinking, remember we had the algo signal just like the S&P 500. We had the algo signal fire off of this wide double bottom, and then I sort of chastised myself. Was it a good idea to front run this and take this setup with the algo, or should I wait? And, long and short of it here, the bullish algo signal on both of these markets disappeared shortly thereafter. But, you could make the argument that if you bought this double bottom and risked against these lows, technically that trade's still working and you're just sitting at scratch right now. But I guess that the point that I just wanted to make for here is, if you did hunt this reload zone, I think the trade actually sort of looks like, where is it? Like that. And I even remember posting in the lounge, there's the algo signal. Did I front run this? Was that a little bit early? Was that a bit cheeky? You notice that the algo is not Uber Bull at all anymore. It's not Uber Bull or Uber Bear, which to a certain degree kind of implies ranging market state. And we come down right into the bottom end of the range. We turn, we work our way up. And I gotta say, I think this setup is actually just working away, doing its thing. And that would correspond with, we've got this higher time frame setup that basically is the double top trend line. You notice, remember our recent failure, that was that mountain man level up in there. And there is that trend line, and gee whiz, what a coincidence. Just like we sort of said with the ES trade. Where did I have that? Yeah, right here. Rally right back up against the top end of the range and then fail. So our projection rally right back up against the top end of the range and then, I don't know, fail, breakout, tough to say now. But that would basically align with just coming back and testing that trend line again. It's fascinating. And ironically enough, we might even argue that, this Hogue 80% value trade is still technically on the books. If we zoom all the way out, here is the bottom of value. If we fail at this trend line, then that would imply that this is not valid as a Hogue 80% trade. But, according to Mr. Hoagland, right, there's his little head right there. We're probably thinking, if this is indeed a Hogue value trade, probably we got to work our way all the way up to this 12,000 area. So I did find it fascinating. It's almost like Bitcoin is like lagging the stock market by about a week, and anybody who did have the kahunas to step in off of this reload zone, I think Joshua was posting some really cool charts to that effect earlier on. But man, what a level. Gotta say, never a dull moment in this crazy space. With regard to our funny little Gann study of 50% retracements and sort of time horizons, I do see to a certain degree that we've kind of disconnected here a little bit with the Gann study as we're coming into this apex. But I do see, big rally needed to do 50%. That was, I'm not quite sure if that's actually accurate or not. I guess 50% would be of this big up move would be down to there. You can see how it went far beyond that. But then we got into sort of these dumps. 50% of that, it went right up into that. And it did it just about exactly half the time that it took for the dump. So then, 50% to the downside is here. We went a bit beyond that, but it was interesting to see how we were fighting our way to try and get back there. Then 50% back down would be down, I guess, into these levels for this window. And I guess what I'm sort of seeing here, and we kind of showed this the other day, it's sloppy. I'm not going to say it's pretty, but it looks very kind of fractally down here. Something like that. It's messy, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is pretty. Maybe even it would be better to do a clothesline. But something along those lines. Not quite sure where to draw that neckline, to be honest with you. So, and then I drew sort of yesterday, AB, AB equals CDs takes us, in fact, we can even do that right now, just AB, CD, So that's projecting a test of that original breakdown level. So I think that's probably in the cards here. It's interesting that I did 50% retracement off of this range right here. And now I would have assumed that that would have been hit through this window here, but it actually took 1 bar longer to actually get back there. So go figure. And actually the lowest low is here, wasn't it? So we could make an argument lowest low is there. So half of that would be sort of 6.5, 7. I think you could make the argument it took 9 bars to actually get to that level. So I don't know, student of the market, watching, does WD Gann play out textbook? It looks like it's close to. It's off by, like just a couple bars here and there. But I'm seeing a lot of sort of, validation of this sort of thinking. It's not exactly spot on, but it's pretty darn close. And if that's the case, then maybe we're thinking, and I'll just keep adjusting this and we'll watch this through the weekend. Maybe it's got to be something like that now, which sort of paints a resolution to Mr. Gann's study somewhere around there. And that would be 24th of August at about 9 o'clock in the morning, or basically New York Hill Zone. So 24th of August that's going to be Saturday. Maybe we can rally a bit further here. Mind you, we are at 50% rules. Maybe a pullback. We'll have to start looking for 50% rules going the other way. Something along those lines. Maybe a test of these tail lows. I don't know, through this window. And then, coming into the apex. And you can sort of see it right now, right? If I just, I know this chart's getting really busy here. But if I just sort of go like, we'll make this a nice big thick line. Why don't we do blue here? You can see that we're coming into something big here. So I suppose that's the one good thing about sort of Mr. Gann, is all of his studies, all of the compression in price. It basically is implying that price action's coming to a head. Some big's gonna happen here on the other side of this. Now, just like the stock market, and keep in mind, it's almost like Bitcoin's like a week behind. Do we maybe like head fake and then move higher? Definitely possible. So, but long and short of it here is, just like I said just a moment ago off of the stock market, I definitely think that we're coming to some sort of head here. And then, that Gann sort of study thinking, I suppose we can, just sort of same sort of study. I'm just gonna ad-lib this, something like that. As we get to sort of 2/3 the apex here, something's gonna happen. Now, maybe we head fake higher and then dump, but I definitely think we're building towards some sort of apex here, and I think it probably develops over the next few days. I was pleased to see, and I felt pretty good for people like Colin. I was maybe we'll put the 3 little charts side by side. Actually, before we get into that, there's just one other thing I wanted to mention here. I do find it fascinating that through all of this price action through the week, all we've really done on the weekly chart for Bitcoin is just create a big fat doji. So, if we do finish here today, then in essence, this is just basically like, the whole week was just an indecision bar. We rallied back up and tested this long-standing high to low trend line I've been following for quite a while. And we tested the bottom end of the range, 38.2s, big fat round numbers, right? We actually traded at 97.55. So you can make an argument and wash the big fat round number again. And on balance through the week, all we've done is just made a doji. I think that also sort of speaks to this kind of conversation. You know, Bitcoin's just sitting at sort of an indecision point. So I do find it interesting, this total 2 crypto market cap and the total market cap. Interesting to see how we're having potential little W's trying to come in here on these the broader altcoin market. Yeah, that it surprised me too, Doji. I'm just gonna call you Doji from now on, Tony. Sorry. But anyway, Tony Doji. So this coin, Bitcoin dominance conversation is still raging here, in my opinion. I don't think there's been any resolution. And like we said, off the weekly chart, all this done is just created a big fat doji here. So I think this is still raging, which leads me to believe I still think that this is a coin picker's market. And you can see some of my names, like this BTT from back in the spring, just basically dead on the vine. And the Doge is back again testing its lows. So there's really nothing going on either of those things. If anything, this totally speaks to coin picker's market, and try to find fundamental drivers. AION, I think, is the one. And what was the other one? Juan, I think. Colin gave us a really, really great presentation on Icon, their relationships with AION and this Juan chain, how ICON started to get going. I think you could actually make the argument that the breakout on this ICX actually corresponds really nicely with actually both the breakout on, looks like the breakout on ICX came here. Looks like pretty much 4 hours later, the breakout on AION came in. And I think you can make the argument that on the same bar, this Juan broke out. Nice double bottom there on that candle right there. Actually, no, it looks like, I think you can make the argument that the breakout was there on that Juan. So, these are lower time frames. Of course, define your trading plan, hunt your setups. I do find it fascinating, of course, the outperformer. We should probably move this to something like that. It looks like, ironically enough, the biggest performer out of all of these now, looking back in hindsight. ICON has not doubled here yet. It's trying to. The AION is just up about 30% or so. But this Juan is up, it hasn't doubled yet either, but it's up a good 50% or so. And interesting to see that the Juan volume actually looks the best out of all of these right now. So this last candle just put in a big green print. Would have liked to have seen on the AION, and probably why it hasn't done as well as the Juan chain is the volume has not broken out here on AION. And my hunch here is that this is a name that was around the last cycle. I don't think Juan was around too much over the last cycle, so there's not too many bag holders. Mind you, this thing's come down an awful long way. Maybe I'll refrain from that comment. But if we look at the AION, you can see that on a relative basis, if this AION was performing the same as this Juan, we would be up around this 140 area. I don't mind the idea of TRIers, especially. I mean, this is like the trader's trade level right in there. But I don't even really mind, just like position traders. If you're like, well, W's are W's are W's. I'm going to go and buy this W here, and I'm just going to simply risk against these lows. I really don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem, though, if you come in now and buy here, like market orders at these levels, because I think you're coming to the party a little late. So if you can get in, and especially the candle body close level, I think that's probably the sexy level off the daily charts. If you can get in off of those levels, then I think you're kicking ass. And then, like I said just a moment ago, the trader's trade, I think, was off of this W right here. And so that's 72 sats. If we go down to this one, like we said just a moment ago, the trader's trade, I think, was down in here. That's 208 sats. And that's probably also a really good example of a nice little trend line breakout, sort of right in that area there, especially with this little indecision bar. So a little too late to be participating on this one, that's for sure. And I might even argue, even looking at this AION now, too late. Just like these things, they spike up, they pull back, spike up, pull back. If you did want to consider participating in these, all you got to do is just draw your reload zones. The good part about this, and great part, we've got Kevin now driving the bus. He and I used to sit in the lounge, do this all the time, where we would just simply, and actually I do kind of like this, because there is the double bottom, and notice how there's a cheeky little price gap right there, right off of the original breakout level. So what that sort of tells me is, if there's going to be a pullback, they're basically going to bring the market right back down to the original bottom where, whoever's in charge of this thing says, this was the bottom, right? Go up, not down. They're probably going to defend this thing in here. And if you're going to take your shot, right, there is the level right there. So if you're going to work open orders, I really don't mind the idea of juxtaposing both reload zones and gap levels to try and help you hunt location. So that's, if I was going to be working a bid off of this thing to try and get in, don't chase it, right? If we do move higher, well, fine, you got to keep drawing your reload zones higher and higher and higher, and hunt for those reload zone tests, because I think that's the prudent thing to do if you're trading these things. Try not to chase. Chasing usually just ends up in tears. So really, really good example that, like I said before, I think this is a coin picker's market. So all of you who are scanning the lists, and I thought it was really great idea that Colin had the other day. I just happen to have like a list of all the altcoins that are on Binance and Polo and also Trex here. Pretty long list, and of course lots of these have gotten punched in the nose. Look at all those names that have gone off the board there. But like Colin had said before, I think it's a great idea just to go through your list and just simply ask. Probably the best thing to do is look at something like a higher time frame, like a daily or something. Are we in trade location? Clearly the good part about this kind of market is you don't have to worry about chasing assets that are just too expensive and waiting for reload zones and stuff. I mean, we're at the bottom end of ranges. So I really like the idea, the way that Colin did that the other day, by flagging these things, right? And just saying, okay, well, if it's in a half decent trade location, then we'll give it a purple flag. And just simply go through and ask, well, are these at trade location? Look how this RDD has come right back down against its original bottom here. And you can always zoom in. See if there are any gaps or anything that needed filling through here. You can see the original bottom. Might have been some unfinished business through there. But you can see where they put a floor in here, so not a bad idea just to plunk that level right on your chart. And then zoom out and say, okay, well, where are we in relation to that? So, you could definitely say, flag that, kind of like what Colin did the other day. I thought that was such a great idea. We'll flag that as potentially good trade location. And then as you sort of go through, you create a list of potential trade location. And then, kind of like what I just showed you on that ones earlier. The ICON, all through here we would have been, especially on this further dump, and you might have even said, well, what might a range extension be here? Maybe I'm going to use extensions to try and identify trade location. All right, so there's 1.618, good old golden ratio. So you could, at this point, have flagged that as trade location. And I usually like to do that as like a blue color. And then go through the process. Okay, so it would have had a purple flag at this point. Then can I see signs of divergence? All of the tools that we teach you in TRI will help you. So you can see the signs of divergence that basically confirmed on this move up here. So you could even say like purple flag as of here. Purple flag. And why don't we even make it purple for posterity? Then divergence is confirmed. Nice W's on Willie and RSI. Nothing really on OBV here, but that was through here. So at this point, you could say, all right, we can now put, I don't know, maybe like, what are the other colors that you have here? Why don't we say the orange flag? I don't know. It's entirely up to you, whatever colors you like to use. Orange flag. An orange flag should be like, all right, I've got location, I've got actually a confirmed divergence, and then, your green flag on the actual double bottom, which comes in there. I think that's actually a really, really good sort of step-by-step process of how to sort of screen your ideas. And you might even say, you know what, I would really, ultimately, I want to see, actually, maybe it's probably something like this. Yeah, there we go. So I want to see an LJ. Well, that didn't even really work that well. Maybe no LJs here, but maybe we could go off, whoops, maybe we can go off of these highs. One, two, yeah, it's iffy. But you could even, draw some trend lines and just simply say, actually that has to go off of there, doesn't it? So, I think I'm thinking like that. So 1, 2, 3. Can I get a W on the other side of a trend line? Very steep, very short duration. Probably you'd have to like look at it from like that perspective. Something like that. So 1, 2, 3, tons and tons. Okay, fine. We're above the trend line. Give me a W. And like we said, location flag goes up, divergence flag goes up, double bottom flag goes up. At this point, maybe you go into RLZ hunting mode, like so, and in comes a mountain man level, and there's a sexy little W that maybe is your sort of final reason to take the trade. But I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this is I really did like how they've got these colored flags here, and Colin sort of mentioned that to us the other day, that's a really handy way for you to sort of, if you're going through your screen on a daily basis, what stage is the actual asset at? Purple flags, you should see a bunch of purple flags. Orange flags, all right, we actually have confirmed divergences. And then finally green flags, hey, this thing's actually rocking and rolling. So I'm actually going to try and do that over the weekend, see if I can go through this list and see if through the coming daily briefs I can show you what I'm seeing. And I think Colin actually did a really great job of that. Next time he's on the show. Oh, yeah, interesting. Okay. Yeah, well, using the fib extensions, I think, is an excellent sort of trade location. Keep in mind, this is just really nothing more than AB. I guess we got to go there. CD. So, once we get into sort of AB equals CD, sort of extension kind of conversations, then you can start looking for reversals. All right, so there's something to consider in the altcoin space. Because of the dominance conversation right now, and the fact that some of these, we're actually starting to get some structure coming in here on some of these other names, and within the space, we might even be getting things like trendline breaks. Yeah, look at that, guys. So I think actually we can actually start paying attention to the altcoins again. It took a long while for us to get to the point where we could actually start paying attention again. But I'm encouraged with what I'm seeing here. So let's keep a close eye on this. I might actually start hunting some setups in altcoin land again. And the interesting thing there is to a certain degree, this kind of would make sense if crypto is sort of not correlated with the stock market and stock market starts going in the pooper. Maybe we're going to start seeing some people looking at crypto again going, gee whiz, these assets sure are beaten down. Maybe we can start hunting trades within this space. So something for you to consider going forward. Okay, why don't we wrap it up at that? As I said, really good, fantastic lesson for everybody, including old man Beamish, that it's awfully dangerous to go and actually make assumptions about things like triangle breakouts heading into big fundamental event windows. An excellent analogy here. I was joking about it with the people in the lounge earlier. Mr. Hoagland and Nebraska, Michael Patak, would have been very, very upset at me had I had on these kind of day trades heading into this big fundamental event. And, as I had illustrated, this thing got stopped out pretty politely. But an excellent analogy of both waiting for fundamental events to happen and then watching the reaction of the market following the event. And then also, too, I think also a really good lesson of how sometimes you can get head fakes on these triangle breakouts and breakdowns, which can sometimes be traps as well. So some really good learning lessons from today. Okay, that is the top of the hour. Yeah, totally, Murad. Murad just even says, if anything, maybe you want to wait till the end of those fundamental events before actually pulling the trigger on anything. Okay, have yourselves a great day, everybody. All the best, and bye for now.